Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to be taking a look at this rather interesting approach, something you probably won't see too much in the United States anymore, but it's still out there and it's absolutely crazily awesome. This instrument approach is an NDBY for runway 34 left. Now, of course, if you take a look up at the tippy top here, you can see we're dealing with Uniform Hotel Papa Papa. This is in Russia. It's on the Kamchatka Peninsula, which is as close to volcanoes and like primordial Earth as I think I've ever seen before. So this approach is awesome. We actually have Look at how many NDBs are on the screen at one time here. So the reason this is going to be critical for us is a lot. First of all, you'll notice that our approach for our landing here is going to be 344 degrees. Next, you're going to notice we don't have one NDB that we're going to be using. We have two NDBs that we're going to be using. Now, this is actually a good thing, and it's a bad thing at the exact same time. Now, in a lot of aircraft, when you do approaches like this, it'll actually say it right at the top that you are required to have dual DMEs to attempt this, dual ADFs in order to try to attempt this approach. Oh, we're going to do it with a single ADF because that's all I've got. I don't have any aircraft that I have that off the top of my head that have capability to do two NDB receivers here. So how does this work? So what we're going to do is we're going to be starting out here somewhere near a Rhinout, and we're going to be trying to find this point in the sky. Now, you'll notice little squiggles squaggles here. We don't actually know where this point in the sky is, but we do know that this particular NDB, Hotel Yankee over here, is at a specific angle to this particular point, which is perpendicular to this one right here. We actually have two NDBs that collide with each other right here, which would actually allow us to locate that particular point. Now, this is a very, very challenging point to find with the dual NDB receivers, ADF receivers, because we could actually watch the needles cross, and that would be the magical point. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to actually be starting out here, and I'm going to approach this until I know that my course to the NDBs here is going to be 344 degrees. Then I'm going to take a left turn, and I'm going to actually start the approach itself. Now, if you take a look at the approach itself, you'll notice that our initial fix here is 1,100 feet, and then we're going to be doing a constant rate descent all the way down. That's a pretty impressive descent there. Definitely something that most people don't think of. One thing you do have to watch out for really, really carefully, though, is you're going to notice they're in kilometers. They are not in feet like we're typically used to here. So our missed approach point, where we got to decide if we want to keep going down or not, is actually at this point here, and it's 75 meters, not 75 feet. So we already have 10 different challenges that we've created for ourselves with this particular approach here. So keeping all those things in mind, you can see just how much fun this is going to be for us. So our initial height here is actually 1,100 m2 feet here. Is probably, what is that, 3,500, something like that. It's 3,608 feet. So about 3,600 feet is our initial position. Then, of course, going down to 75 meters there is going to be about 250 feet. So that's one heck of a descent here. So this is going to require some setup for us. So let's go head over to the sim and see if we can figure this one out. Because, woo boy, this is going to be a challenge for us. Aha! Let's go ahead and pause. There we are. So we're starting at 1,100 feet. You can tell that when I did this one originally, I said, hey, 1,100 meters. And I'm like, wait a minute. Then I ran through it and realized my silly mistake there. So definitely make sure you're at the correct initial altitude here. Otherwise, you're going to be suffering all sorts of fun problems later on when you go to approach this one. All right, that's good. That's what I'd like right here. So you can see our airport off there to our left. It's a very large airport. Now, what I've done here is I've gone ahead and dialed into our handy-dandy NDB receivers our two different, our NDBs, our ADF, two different frequencies. So the first one's going to be the 465, which if you remember from our little diagram we saw a few moments ago, the 465 is going to be the inner marker, and we also have 920, which is going to be our outer marker. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to get our two needles to center on the same point by flipping between them rapidly until we see the point where we can actually go ahead and execute our approach. Now, I can cheat just a tiny bit with this because I have an external tool that allows me to flip between them very, very quickly. So we can do our dual ADF approach, even though we've only got the single one. So what are we going to be looking for? So as you can see right now, we can synchronize our heading up with our particular tool here. So I'm going to grab this sucker. I'm going to synchronize this with our heading. Looks like we're on a heading of, I'll call it 60 degrees. And I'll correct that in a second as well. There's 60 degrees. We're going to go ahead and turn this to the right to 60 degrees. Now, when this yellow needle is pointing at the heading of the runway, which is going to be 344 degrees, we know we need to take a left turn to 344 and then start playing the synchronize the needles game while we get our approach coming down. Now, our approach here is going to be a 3-degree approach. So we're going to be coming down at 120 knots, which is going to give us about 600 feet per minute, give or take, while we're going to be fiddling with all the knots here. So you can already see just how many little things that we're going to be battling with in order to make this flight successful here. I'm going to go ahead and reduce our speed a little bit before we attempt this one, because this one's going to be very, 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 very challenging. So I need just about 120 knots there, which is going to be just about right there. That should be plenty. Right there, about 15 inches should be plenty for us. Delightful. All right, ready? No, not really. I'm not ready. This looks pretty terrifying. All right, we'll set that to altitude hold mode. Looks pretty good. I'm going to make sure we're in heading hold mode right now, which we is. And I'm just going to head on pause. Here we go. Okay, so this is going to be fun. So I'm going to keep my 120 knots or so. And what we're doing is we're watching our guys to go ahead and switch. You'll notice, by the way, if I swap NDBs, do you see how the two needles are basically in the same spot? So if I do a frequency swap, 920 is not catching. There it goes. See how it's about there? And if I switch to this one, give it a second. See, it's about in the same position. So ideally, those two needles will be perfectly centered when we spin ourselves around here. So it's 355 degrees. Remember, we're trying to get it to be right about this position right here. And double check to make sure these two are correct. That's about 350, 347. Probably a good time to go ahead and start our turn. Ready, go. Start our turn. So now we're going to go ahead and pull ourselves onto our final approach fix here. That looks pretty good there. And we're going to go ahead and rotate this so that it agrees with our final approach fix. Go ahead and crank this sucker around. Oh my gosh, I haven't used one of these in so long. There we go. And now what's going to happen is, ideally, we're going to come out of this turn and we're going to be facing more or less where we know. Now, I know you're all cheating and looking out the window and being like, aha, it's not so bad. Aha. Aha. We'll go ahead and arm via vertical speed mode. We've had some fun with this week. About 600 feet per minute. And let's do it. So remember, this always points towards the station. So I'm looking right now, I can see that the station is slightly off to my left. Now, if I do a frequency swap, you'll notice that the two needles, see how this needle is slightly closer? This is the closer station to the other one, which means, relatively speaking, if both needles to the left, it means we need to come to the left as well in order to center the needle back out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a left turn here. I'm going to let the plane settle itself out here. About 600 feet per minute is going to be plenty on the way down here. And we're going to switch back to the frequency. We're going to look to see where the inner marker is. Now, do you see how the inner marker is more or less centered? Now, if I swing to the outer marker, which is going to be the one closest to us right now, that's the 920. I'm sorry, this is the inner marker, my bad. So if the inner marker and the outer marker, let's go ahead and take a look at both of them, both agree with each other, that means the aircraft is pointing exactly at the end of the runway. Now, what we're looking for really, really carefully here is to see what happens to the relationship between these two markers. So now if I switch, you can see right now how this one's just slightly to the left. If I swing to this one, you see how this one's more to the right? This one's the one we're closer to. That means that if you want to think about it kind of visually, if you have one marker over here and one marker over here, we're more pointing towards this one, which means we have to take a left turn in order to compensate. So I'm going to bring ourselves over to 3-3. Again, don't forget you still have to fly the plane. And yes, you can look out the window if you want to kind of follow along with us so far. So now this needle is going to swing to the right. Remember, 465 is going to be our inner marker. This is the one closer to the runway, and we can tell the runway's to our right. Now, if I switch to this one, which is the marker that's closer to us, do you see how they're just about at the same position now? That means our aircraft is more or less lined up directly with the end of the runway, which now means we can turn our airplane back onto our original course. Now, keep in mind, when you mix wind into this gets much more exciting. So again, we're going to spin back. I'll go ahead and try not to look out the window so you can't cheat here. Do my frequency swap. We're expecting both these needles to be centered on the same spot. So you can see it's right about 350, 340. If I press this one, yeah, so you can see here that our inner marker is still slightly, actually our outer marker, sorry, don't get them backwards, slightly to our left, whereas our inner marker will most likely be slightly to our left as well. That means we need to come more to the left in order to synchronize ourselves back with the runway. Now looking out the runway, obviously you can see it right down there. We're continuing our approach. Let's start slowing our plane down, getting ready for our landing here. All right, to our switch, we can see that one says it's to the right. What does the other one say? See how the one that is going to be our outer marker says it's a little to our left, which means we're getting very close to it. So now what I'm going to do is actually switch to my other marker. We just went right over the top of it. So now what we have to do is we have to play the marker game and use just the inner marker for the purposes of lining ourselves up for landing here. Give it a little bit of power. You can see that we are pointing right at it. It doesn't mean we're right at it, it just means we're pointing at it. So we're going to continue our descent here. Get a little bit bit more speed. Again, we're using just the inner marker, and you can see we're pointing at the inner marker, and it's roughly the same heading that we're on at the same time here. We're getting very close. Now, if I were to switch, by the way, to the outer marker, I believe we've already passed it. Yep. See how it says outer marker? Ah, I'm so good sometimes. All right, swing it back. So now we're flying our landing with this one here, and you can see we're pretty well established here. Probably a little fast and a little high. Looking out the window, obviously you can see the end of the runway there, but everything's coming pretty smoothly so far. Slow down just a tiny bit, and then we need to come, look to our left, a little bit to our left. Again, this points to the station. This heading is not adjusting, so you have to be a little bit of mental foo here, which is why these things are so darn stupid. They're so dangerous. All right, that looks pretty good there. Coming down to about 1,000 feet. I'm still pretty much right on course. So we're going to watch this needle flip. And when this needle flips is when we're going to be hitting that magic point. That's the missed approach point. We're a little on the high side still. All right, looking pretty good, Where our heading is basically agrees. Looks good. Looks pretty good. I'm going to reduce power just a tiny bit here. Okay, see how it's starting to swing to the left again? So that means that marker that we need is shifting gently. Oh, see how it's getting silly? That means we're about to the point. And if I look out the window, you can see there's our runway. So that needle, of course, we'll go ahead and continue the landing, and we're going to assume that we're able to find it there. Minimums anyway. We're going to swing to the right. Now watch what the needle does. It's going to go, and then flip around. And there it goes. Isn't that amazing? So normally when you fly these approaches, you'd have dual receivers for this. So you could actually watch both sets of needles at the same time, which makes it vastly simpler in order to identify when you're hitting all the critical components. Notice, despite that, we're still able to execute the approach, even though we wouldn't have the appropriate equipment to actually do it in the real world. It's just kind of a neat little opportunity. I feel so wrong flying in this region without this place completely covered in snow, but hey, it happens sometimes. All right, there's a lovely runway 34 there. Looks like the windsock. Crosswind. Figures. Every time, I swear. There we go. We're just going to hold the nose up to intercept the descent right here. There we are. Nice. Cool. So as you can see, the dual ADF dual NDB is a very, very interesting approach, and it really requires more specialized equipment. But regardless, once we kind of work out the math and work out the angles, it's bad, but not terrible. Enjoy.